I woke up to silence. The kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful, but hollow. The kind that makes your heart instinctively beat faster before your brain even catches up. Our lakeside cabin in Colorado was usually filled with soft noises. The drip of the coffee maker starting on a timer, Mallory humming absent-mindedly while journaling, the thud of her yoga mat unrolling in the den. But that morning, nothing. Her side of the bed was made. Not just empty, made. Pillow puffed, blanket tucked, as if she'd never slept there at all. I sat up, rubbing my eyes. The air was cool, the early morning mist still clinging to the pines just outside the window. I grabbed my sweatshirt off the chair and walked barefoot to the kitchen. On the table was a note, the kind of thing that used to make me smile. Early client meeting in town. Back by lunch. Love you, M. It was written in her loopy cursive. A little heart punctuating the I in client, like she always did when she was in a good mood. For a second, I believed it. I wanted to believe it. But the thing is, Mallory's job had shifted in the past year. She worked mostly remote now, taking virtual sessions from the study upstairs or sometimes in the garden if it was warm enough. And when she did go into town, she usually told me the night before. Asked if I needed anything. Lately, though, there had been more surprises. More solo drives. More phrases like, "You wouldn't be interested," or "It's just a work thing." I poured myself some coffee and sat by the window watching the water. I tried not to spiral, not to read into things. But it was too quiet in the cabin. Too staged. Like the day had been wiped of her presence. At 9:12 a.m., my phone rang. Sarah. An old coworker from Denver I hadn't heard from in months. We used to get drinks after work, the kind of casual friendship that faded once she moved out here to be closer to family. "Hey, Owen," she said, her voice bright but hesitant. Weird question. But, is Mallory seeing someone named Jason? My gut turned cold. Why do you ask? Well, I was just at Blue Birch Cafe and I saw her. With a guy. Tall, scruffy beard. Glasses. Kinda therapist chic, you know? They were sitting real close at one of the corner tables. Laughing, touching each other's hands. I thought maybe it was her brother or something. But I remembered you don't have family out here. My stomach dropped. I knew who she meant. Jason. That name had slipped out more than once over the last couple months. At first in passing. Someone from her group sessions she started attending when we hit a rough patch last fall. She said he was a marriage counselor who gave advice during the workshops, that he was just really insightful, and made her think differently about herself. She brought him up in that casual way people do when they want to mention someone without sounding like they're interested in them. I didn't say much to Sarah. Just thanked her and told her to enjoy her morning. Then I sat there at the table for a long time, staring at the note she'd left. Early client meeting. It rang in my ears, over and over, clashing violently with the image Sarah had painted. Mallory. Smiling across a cafe table at Jason. Leaning in, touched hands, laughter that didn't belong to us anymore. I tried to shake it. People misread things all the time. Sarah didn't know what she saw. Maybe they ran into each other. Maybe she was just being kind, comforting. That's what Mallory does, right? But even as I thought those things, I couldn't make myself believe them. She came home around noon, just like the note promised. Walked in with that familiar breezy energy, a to-go cup in hand, sunglasses perched on her head. She looked like she was still mid-conversation with someone in her mind. "Hey babe," she called, setting down her keys. "Hope you got some good writing in this morning. I picked up a green juice if you want some." I tried to keep my voice steady. "How was your meeting?" She hesitated, just a flicker, then smiled like nothing had happened. "Oh, it got canceled last minute. Total waste of a drive. So I just hung out in town for a bit. Ran into some people from the group. Ended up grabbing brunch. With Jason." She blinked. And just like that, the mask shifted. "Yeah," she said after a pause, too casual. "He was there. Couple others, too. It wasn't a big deal. Sarah saw you at Blue Birch. She said it looked personal." Mallory laughed. Not loudly, not naturally. One of those airy, dismissive chuckles she used when she was uncomfortable. "Sarah? You haven't talked to her in how long? And now she's suddenly keeping tabs on me." That's not the point. She walked to the sink and poured herself some water. Look, it's not what you're thinking. Jason's part of my therapy group. We talk a lot, sure. He gets it. But it's not anything like that. Why are you getting so paranoid? Paranoid. That word landed hard. As if I was the problem here. As if the issue wasn't her lie, it was my reaction to it. I'm not paranoid, I said quietly. I just don't like being lied to. She sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. Owen, I didn't lie. I just didn't think it mattered. I didn't want to make a thing out of it because I knew you'd get like this. There it was. The deflection. The reframe. The twist that turned my concern into overreaction. I didn't say anything else. Just nodded and let it go, at least on the surface. But something inside me had shifted. I'd always prided myself on trusting her, on not being the jealous type. But that morning, it felt like the foundation had tilted. Not because she was caught in some grand betrayal, but because of the way she handled it. The rewrite of the narrative. The sudden gaslighting. I spent the rest of the day pretending to be normal. Pretending her laugh didn't sound too loud, too forced. Pretending that I didn't picture her fingers brushing his across a table where we used to sit on Sunday mornings. She went about her afternoon like nothing had changed. But for me, the stillness of the lake, the silence of the cabin, it all felt different now, like the start of something unraveling. After that morning, everything looked different. Not just Mallory, everything. The cabin, the routines, the everyday noises and silences we used to share. I couldn't move through a single room without seeing it all as evidence in a case I hadn't meant to open. But now that it was open, I couldn't close it. I couldn't unsee what I saw, or unhear what Sarah had told me. Something was off. And it had been off for a while. It started with the phone. That damn phone. Mallory used to leave it around the house like a teenager. Screen cracked, half-charged, often forgotten under couch cushions or in coat pockets. But lately it was like it never left her hand. Always face down, always locked with a thumbprint or a code I didn't know. I only noticed the difference because it was so intentional. The way she'd angle it away from me when she got a notification, or tuck it into her hoodie the second I entered the room. She'd laugh off my questions. It's work stuff, or I'm tracking my goals, or you wouldn't care about any of it. And maybe she was right. I wouldn't have cared, not before. But now, every swipe of her thumb was like a secret unfolding in real time. Then there were her growth routines. A few months back, she started printing out these color-coded daily schedules. I thought it was just another self-help trend. Mallory loved those, so I didn't give it much thought. Each day was broken into chunks. Creative flow, grounding practice, self-optimization, energy restoration. At first, I was proud of her for taking charge of her well-being. I mean, who was I to judge someone trying to get their life together? But I wasn't in the schedules. Not really. I'd skim them while she was in the shower or outside on a call, hoping to find some little note about dinner together, a hike, a conversation slot, anything. But there was nothing. Just solo journaling, guided meditations, Zoom calls labeled group renewal, and meal blocks filled with things I'd never seen her eat before. She started preparing her own meals, too. Exotic things, fermented vegetables, bone broth, Thai curries, vegan biryani. Dishes I had never liked, things we never cooked together. She'd make them in single servings, plate them beautifully, and eat alone on the porch, headphones in, face lit up by her phone. Once I joined her, sat across from her on the old cedar table with a bowl of cereal while she dug into a spicy lentil dish. She smiled at me, polite but distant. You really should try this stuff, Owen. It's transformative. I just nodded. I was afraid if I said more, I'd ask questions I wasn't ready to hear the answers to. But the mosaic of unease kept growing. In the bathroom, I found a men's razor. It was sleek, matte black, a brand I didn't use. Something fancier, like the kind that comes in a subscription box. We hadn't had guests in months. I picked it up, turned it in my hands like it would reveal something obvious. But it didn't. Just the weight of suspicion settling heavier on my chest. When I asked her about it later, she said, "Oh, that came in one of my wellness kits. You know how they send random stuff." She said it fast, like she'd rehearsed it. I didn't press. But I didn't forget. Another day, I was cleaning out her car. Something she usually did herself, obsessively. I thought I'd surprise her. Instead, I found a gym bag in the trunk. At first, I was relieved. Gym bag? Fine. Innocent. But when I unzipped it, there was no workout gear. Just designer leggings still with the tag on, perfume, a change of clothes, and a packet of breath mints. Not gum. Mints. I closed it up, placed it exactly where I found it, and sat in the driver's seat until my hands stopped shaking. You start to question everything after that. Like the book she left face down on the counter, a relationship memoir with a highlighted passage that read, "We outgrow people who anchor us to our worst fears." That line haunted me. Not because it meant anything concrete, but because it might. Or the way she started avoiding the dock at sunset. That used to be our time, feet in the water, beers in hand, quiet conversation as the sun dipped below the pines. Now she stayed inside, citing bugs or journaling or needing to recenter. I went alone every evening feeling like a man who had been left behind in his own life. There was a moment, just one, where I almost asked her. Point blank. We were in the kitchen, a rainy Thursday afternoon, both of us barefoot on the cool wood floor. I was pouring tea, she was slicing mango. The air felt normal. Like maybe I had imagined it all. I looked at her and said, "Do you ever feel like we're just roommates now?" She didn't look up. Just kept slicing. "Don't be dramatic," she said. "You always get like this when you're in a writing slump." But it wasn't a slump. It was suspicion metastasizing. And now I had nowhere to put it except in the margins of my notebooks, in the unsent drafts of messages I typed at night and deleted in the morning. One night, she fell asleep early on the couch. I took her phone gently, quietly. My palms were sweating. I pressed my thumb to the sensor. Locked. Tried again. Still locked. I stared at the screen like it was a barricade I wasn't allowed to cross. Like the truth was on the other side and I wasn't worthy of it. I put it back. What was I even hoping to find? A message from Jason? A love letter hidden in her notes app? The proof felt less important than the feeling, the way she looked at her phone with more tenderness than she looked at me lately. And then came the final piece of the mosaic. A receipt. Crumpled in the pocket of the hoodie she left draped over the chair. A boutique hotel in Boulder. One room. Midweek. No explanation. No business card or itinerary. Just a small, elegant receipt dated last Tuesday, a day she said she spent with a friend from her yoga group. A group I'd never met. People she never named. I didn't ask her about it. I just sat on the porch that night, the receipt folded tightly in my hand, listening to the frogs in the marsh and wondering when I had become the kind of man who needed to collect evidence in his own home. The truth wasn't hiding anymore. It was everywhere. In receipts, in razors, in routines. I just hadn't wanted to see it. But now I couldn't look away. By the third night of lying awake, staring at the dark ceiling of our bedroom, I realized I wasn't going to get peace from second-guessing. I needed proof. Not whispers, not receipts or misaligned schedules, proof. The kind of evidence that silences the internal debates and annihilates the benefit of the doubt. So I did what I never thought I'd do in my own home. I turned on surveillance. The cabin had an old security system from before we bought it, a basic setup with a camera at the front entryway and another near the back porch. We'd never used them. Mallory always joked that cameras were for people who didn't trust their neighbors or their partners. That should have told me something. But now I quietly reactivated the system. Hooked the cameras up to an app on my phone and tested the alerts. The motion detector worked like a charm. I set it to notify me whenever someone passed through the front door. The first day? Nothing out of the ordinary. Just us. Me going for a walk, Mallory heading out in her car around 10 a.m., returning around 3 p.m. She brought back groceries. I tried not to overanalyze. The second day? Same. Errands, yoga, laptop work. She sat on the porch for an hour talking into her earbuds. Said it was a coherence call, something about realigning her energy. I nodded, pretending to understand. But the third day? That was different. I was in town, picking up supplies and trying to lose myself in errands. The motion alert came through at 12:17 p.m. The front door had opened. Mallory coming home alone. That made sense. But then, 12 minutes later, another alert, a second person entering. Male. Average build, wearing a gray jacket, short beard. He walked up like he belonged there, like he'd done it before. Jason. I paused in the aisle at the hardware store, heart hammering. I watched the footage on my phone in real time, fingers numb. She answered the door smiling. That alone would have been enough. The way she greeted him, open arms, no hesitation. She stepped aside to let him in, brushing her hand across his back as he passed. Her eyes lingered on him, soft and alive in a way I hadn't seen in months. He carried nothing, no books, no folder, nothing resembling professional context. They disappeared inside. For the next 90 minutes, there were no alerts. I sat in my car in the parking lot outside the store, staring at my phone, watching the time tick by like a man waiting for a verdict. My hands couldn't stop shaking. I thought about calling her, making something up to see if she'd lie to me in real time, but I didn't. I just waited. At 1:54 p.m., the camera activated again. Jason leaving. But this time he was different. Less confident. He glanced around before stepping out like someone checking to see if they were being watched. Mallory didn't walk him out. She stayed inside. The door closed behind him with a soft click. The frame caught a moment as he reached the bottom step of the porch. A brief reflection in the cabin's sliding glass doors behind him, not clear, not sharp, but unmistakable in its shape, two bodies, close together, entangled in a moment neither of them expected to be seen. It was blurred, but it was real. A shoulder. A bareback. The outline of two people where there should have been none. I stared at the screen for a long time. Replayed it. Slowed it down. Zoomed in. My heart broke pixel by pixel. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel rage. What I felt was confirmation. Cold. Clean. Devastating. It wasn't that I had suspected. It was that I knew deep down. All the lies, the gaslighting, the shifting blame, they were all leading here. But seeing it? That changed something. I drove home 2 hours later. By then, Jason was gone and Mallory was in the garden pulling weeds like nothing had happened. She waved when she saw me, all sunshine and casual affection, like she hadn't just detonated our life. "Hey babe," she called. "I think the strawberries are finally coming in. Wanna help?" I said I had a headache. I lied. She nodded sympathetically and went back to digging in the dirt. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I watched the footage again. And again. I memorized every detail. The exact minute he arrived. The way she smiled. The shift in her eyes when she opened the door. I became a student of betrayal. An archivist of collapse. I didn't confront her. Not right away. There was nothing she could say that would unsee what I'd seen. And part of me wanted to wait, not out of vengeance, but out of understanding. I needed to see how she'd behave without knowing I knew. I needed to watch her lie again. To record that too, if only in my mind. The next morning, over coffee, she said she had a solo integration session in town. "Long one," she said. "Probably won't be back until mid-afternoon." I nodded. "You want me to make dinner tonight?" She smiled. "That'd be great." She kissed my cheek like she meant it. And that's what gutted me most, how easily she could pivot. From his arms to my kitchen. From lies to logistics. She didn't know that every move was now a page in the story I was archiving. Later that afternoon, I checked the camera footage again. No alerts. No Jason. But the damage was done. Something in me had ruptured. Trust wasn't just gone, it had been erased, surgically removed, replaced with surveillance and silence. I wasn't a husband anymore. I was a witness. A quiet observer living alongside the performance of a relationship. And the scariest part? She was still playing her role perfectly. That night, she sat on the couch beside me, scrolling through her phone, laughing at videos. She showed me one, a dog doing something absurd. I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because I needed to keep her calm. Keep her unaware. Because I wasn't ready to say the words yet. Not until I understood what kind of game we were really playing. So I watched. And waited. And behind my eyes, the image of her, reflected, blurred, but undeniable, burned itself into permanence. The truth was no longer a question. It was a matter of time. The silence between us became sacred. Not because it was peaceful, but because it was strategic. I had no intention of confronting her. Not now. Not when I finally understood the game we were playing. Mallory had made her move. Now it was my turn. But I wasn't going to shout or demand or plead. I wasn't going to fall apart. I was going to mirror her. I began by adopting her language, the very vocabulary she had armed herself with to justify the distance. Emotional bandwidth, energy restoration, intentional presence. I used those words back at her. Casually. Calmly. And every time I did, I watched her eyes flicker with a mixture of suspicion and unease, like I'd cracked some code she thought only she understood. I started tracking everything. Expenses. Schedules. Conversations. Just like she did. I began maintaining a shared calendar, pretending it was a way to rebuild structure. I color-coded the days, green for connection, blue for solitude, red for alignment break. I left sticky notes around the cabin with affirmations that sounded like they'd been ripped from her journals. Trust is the soil. Transparency is the sunlight. Or my favorite, growth doesn't wait for permission. She never acknowledged them, but she saw them. And that was enough. I also started logging our interactions in a spreadsheet. Nothing dramatic. Just notes. Date, time, tone. Topics discussed. Eye contact maintained. Physical proximity. Average duration of each exchange. I told myself it was to stay organized, to keep track of our progress. But really, it was a mirror. A silent reflection of what our relationship had become. It didn't take long for the tension to thicken. One night, she sat on the porch reading, and I brought out 2 mugs of tea. Set hers beside her without a word. Sat down, opened my own book. After a long silence, she glanced up. "You're being quiet lately," she said. I nodded. "I'm conserving emotional energy." She frowned. "Are you upset?" "Not upset," I replied. "Just observing patterns." That shut down the conversation. She sipped her tea and didn't ask another question. The next morning, I rearranged our kitchen cabinets. Moved the spice jars into alphabetical order, reorganized the pantry by expiration date. When she came in and noticed, I just said, just trying to bring clarity to shared space. She didn't smile. Didn't joke. She just nodded and opened the fridge slowly, as if unsure what else might have changed overnight. We became 2 people managing a home like a co-op, schedules lined up, tasks divided, chores done with precision but without warmth. The Macy that once lived in the casual chaos, the overlapping toothpaste tubes, the mismatched socks in the laundry, was gone. In its place was a machine. And I made sure that machine ran on her logic. She had once created a meal journal, a tracking log for how food affected her mood. I resurrected it. But now it included both of us. Each night, I'd rate the meal and note our emotional temperature during dinner. I even added smiley faces. Frowns. Occasional blank entries when the silence between us stretched too far to quantify. She didn't comment, but I caught her reading it more than once. One weekend, I suggested we take a break from devices. A digital detox, I said, to help restore presence. She agreed reluctantly. 2 hours in, I caught her sneaking glances at her phone hidden beneath a throw pillow. She smiled when she noticed me watching. "I was just checking the time," she said. "No worries," I replied. "Boundaries take time to embody." She stared at me for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether to laugh or scream. Instead, she stood and went upstairs without another word. That night, I laid in bed alone, staring at the ceiling, listening to her restless movements in the guest room she had migrated to for sleep hygiene. The distance was growing, but not in the way she intended. She wanted to retreat, to disengage softly, to dissolve into something that could be explained by shifting values and personal growth. But I refused to give her that narrative. I wasn't going to rage. I wasn't going to chase. I was going to hold up the mirror she had built and let her see what we looked like inside her own system. After dinner one night, she brought it up. "I feel like you're trying to prove something," she said. "Like you're performing some kind of resistance." I smiled. "No performance. Just alignment. You've never cared about any of this stuff before." "I'm adapting," I said. "Evolving. Isn't that what we're supposed to do?" Her lips tightened. "You're mocking me." I shook my head. "Not at all. I'm honoring the structure. Just trying to meet you where you are." She looked down at her plate. "It doesn't feel real." I reached across and picked up her used fork. Measured its placement. Logged it in my mind. Authenticity is subjective. Behavior is measurable. She stood up and left the table. I didn't follow. In truth, I didn't feel powerful doing this. I didn't feel clever or vengeful. I felt hollow, robotic. But this was the only way I could make her see it, not by arguing or accusing, but by showing her what our life had become when stripped of spontaneity and emotion. Just routines. Metrics. Data. One morning, I posted a schedule on the fridge. Wednesday. 7 a.m. wake. 7:30 a.m. grounding independent. 8:15 a.m. joint tea optional. 9 a.m. emotional check-in, 5 minutes, structured. 12 p.m. lunch prep, shared responsibility. 4:30 p.m. device audit. 7 p.m. dinner, feedback encouraged. 8 p.m. space for reflective journaling. 10 p.m. sleep intention setting. She tore it down without a word. That afternoon, she left the house for 2 days. No explanation. Just gone. When she returned, her face was pale. Eyes tired. She didn't say much, just moved through the house slowly, as if unfamiliar with the furniture. She didn't ask what I'd been doing. Didn't ask about the fridge, or the spreadsheet, or the log of interactions I had kept updated while she was away. She looked at me like I was someone else. Someone she didn't quite recognize. I think that's when it hit her. This wasn't about punishment. It was about reflection. And her own system had turned against her. It began with a spreadsheet. Not a dramatic confrontation, not a blowout fight, just a Google sheet with 5 tabs, color-coded, neatly labeled, time drift, in asterisk Macy frequency, financial divergence, behavioral variance, and emotional proximity. Each one was a mirror. Each one told the story she refused to speak. She found it on the kitchen table one Saturday morning. I left it open on my laptop with a post-it that simply read, "For transparency." She sat down across from me, still in her robe, holding a mug of tea with both hands like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Her eyes scanned the screen silently. The time drift tab was simple. A list of her comings and goings logged from memory, camera timestamps, and her own public calendar. I charted them visually, showing how the overlap between our daily lives had shrunk from 80% shared time to under 30% in the past 3 months. Then there was an asterisk Macy frequency. I didn't embellish. Just the raw data. Date of last kiss longer than 5 seconds, 37 days ago. Last spontaneous hug initiated by her, 42 days. Last night we fell asleep in the same bed, 19 days. Last *Zool encounter, 62 days. I'd included a small note in the margin. Lack of physical touch was not initially the issue. It became the evidence. Financial divergence was harder to stomach. I tracked new spending patterns, monthly payments to a private coaching firm I'd never heard of, fees for retreat deposits she never discussed, purchases from boutique wellness brands that shipped to P.O. boxes, things she had rerouted to town instead of our doorstep. The total amount? $3,617 over 2 months. I cross-referenced that with her old budget. A shift from shared home items, groceries, supplies, maintenance to personal enrichment services. There was a pattern. She didn't interrupt me as I clicked through. But I saw her hand twitch slightly when I opened behavioral variance. This was where it got cold. Clinical. Columns like average response time to text messages, mine versus others. Change in food preferences, documented dish rejections, and new solo meals. Physical distancing, average seat choice when presented with 2 chairs. Weekend availability, tracking her declared alone time versus observed activities. I included a graph. It looked like a company's performance review, and in a way, that's what it had become. Finally, emotional proximity. This one wasn't about numbers. This was quotes. Things she had said to me over the past few months, things I'd written down without her knowing. I just need to prioritize myself right now. You wouldn't understand unless you were doing the same work. This isn't about us, it's about me. You always react instead of reflect. Jason says emotional regulation starts with removing expectations. I had marked the last one in red. That was the only time she'd ever mentioned him directly outside of therapy context. When I finished walking through the tabs, I looked up. Her face was unreadable. Eyes glassy. Mouth set in a firm, confused line, like she wasn't sure whether to be angry or impressed. "This is a lot," she finally said. "I thought data mattered to you," I said quietly. "It's what you've built everything around lately." She didn't argue. I expected her to push back, to accuse me of spying, obsessing, being vindictive. But instead, she just sat there, still, like someone trying to calculate their next move on a chessboard that had already declared checkmate. "What are you trying to prove?" she asked eventually. I shook my head. "Nothing. Just reflecting what's already here. This is your system, Mallory." I just gave it shape. Her breath caught slightly. She looked down at her tea and then pushed it away. "This isn't how people solve problems." "No," I agreed. "It's how people track them." She stood up then. Didn't slam anything. Didn't yell. Just stood, turned, and left the room. She didn't come back for the rest of the day. That night, I heard her car start and drive off. No note this time. No shared calendar update. She was just gone. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't panic. I just updated the spreadsheet. New entry, time drift, departure, 8:17 p.m. No return recorded. The next few days were quiet. I went about my routines. Made coffee. Sat on the porch. Walked the trail behind the cabin. It was almost peaceful except for the weight of what I knew. The echo of everything that used to exist between us, now replaced by silence and statistics. On the 3rd morning, I walked past her side of the bed and saw her planner left behind. It was open to a week filled with appointments, but none of them had happened. Pages unmarked, boxes unchecked. Her system had broken. She returned late that night. I heard her keys at the door, the cautious sound of someone entering a space they no longer owned. She didn't say anything. Just set down her bag, removed her shoes, and walked to the couch like a guest waiting for permission to speak. I sat across from her. She looked thinner. Eyes tired. hair messy in a way she usually wouldn't tolerate. I don't know what I'm doing anymore, she said. I said nothing. I built all this structure around myself because I was scared, she continued. I thought if I controlled every variable, I could fix what I felt slipping. I thought if I just worked hard enough on me, I could pull us back. And Jason? She winced. Jason was a distraction. A symbol. He made it feel easy. Controlled. But it wasn't real. So what was real? She paused. You, she said. Us. Before I started outsourcing our marriage to systems and metrics and escape routes. She looked up. I thought you'd scream at me. Or leave. Or do something dramatic. I did something better, I replied. I showed you what you made. She nodded slowly, tears in her eyes. You did. And it's terrifying. There was no apology yet. But there was truth. And after so much noise, so much redirection, so much silence, that was enough to keep the conversation going. For now. It was nearly midnight when she finally broke. We were sitting on the porch, the lake dark and glassy under a cloud-covered sky. The kind of night where sound carries, where every word feels amplified. Mallory sat beside me barefoot, her knees tucked up against her chest. No planner, no phone, no performance. Just her raw, quiet, and unraveling. I don't know when I stopped trusting myself, she said. I turned slightly, waiting. I thought if I could keep everything under control, my time, my emotions, my goals, then nothing would fall apart. But the tighter I held it all, the more disconnected I became. From you. From myself. Her voice cracked, and she didn't try to hide it. She didn't deflect this time. Didn't pivot or reframe. She just confessed. Jason wasn't just an affair. He was a way to script something predictable. He always knew what to say. What page we were on. There was no risk. Just roles. I let that sit for a moment before answering. People aren't pages in a workbook, Mallory. You don't get to check off an asterisk Macy. Or schedule out trust. She nodded slowly, tears falling now. I know. God, I know. I didn't know how to fix what we were losing. So I started managing it like a project. Like if I could make a system around my feelings, I wouldn't have to actually feel them. And now? I asked. I'm tired, she whispered. Not of you. Of this. Of pretending this structure could save us. The porch creaked beneath us as we sat there, the silence between us no longer sharp, but soft. Shared. She reached for my hand. Not as a plea, just contact. And for the first time in months, it didn't feel like a negotiation. It felt like a choice. The next morning, we deleted the apps. The meal trackers. The meditation schedules. The emotional scoring sheets. Every calendar reminder, every growth metric, every digital checkpoint meant to keep us improving. Gone. Then we found the box where she kept her journals, all those notebooks filled with careful, curated versions of our lives. We read a few entries in silence. Some were poetic. Some were defensive. One page just said, "Today I felt nothing," and called it clarity. We burned them in the fire pit that evening. No ceremony. No dramatics. Just the smell of paper and ink turning to smoke and two people watching years of structure give way to simplicity. She ended her coaching contract the next day. Called Jason. Told him not to reach out again. No explanation beyond, I need to find my life, not another version of it. We didn't pretend everything was healed. I didn't forgive her in one sweeping moment. But we made small changes that mattered. No phones at dinner. Walks without step goals. Conversations with no bullet points. We practiced being unscheduled, doing things simply because we felt like it. Sometimes it was messy. Awkward. We talked over each other. Fumbled through quiet. Laughed at the wrong times. But it was real. Mallory started sitting next to me on the couch again, not just near me, but with me. Her hand would find mine. Not to ask for something. Just to connect. She stopped asking me to log how I felt. And I stopped keeping track. The spreadsheet disappeared. The camera app was deleted. We didn't become perfect. We didn't even become what we were before. But we became something new, two people willing to stop measuring and start being present. One morning, weeks later, she handed me a cup of coffee without a word. No sticky note. No quote attached. Just the coffee. It was the best cup I've ever had.